Amid rumors around Kamal Nath, Manish Tiwari, and God knows which other Congress leaders' imminent exit, the opposition party of India, and in fact the entire opposition of India, faces a challenge like never before. The rise of Narendra Modi is still being understood and analyzed by political pundits just a couple of months before elections. And despite a big critical setback from the Supreme Court on electoral bonds, at least right now, it looks as if nothing can obstruct or halt or even slow down the Modi juggernaut as it cruises and races towards another victory in 2024. Could there still be an X factor? Could there still be a surprise? Well, senior journalist, editor, and trenchant columnist Vir Sanghvi, writing in the print, actually talks about the stench of failure, the exits from the Congress, and draws a fascinating parallel between Narendra Modi and Roosevelt and Margaret Thatcher, not the usual parallels that we get to hear in the media. To talk about the rise of Modi, the collapse of the Congress, and the kind of political landscape that is evolving all around us, let's welcome Veer to the broadcast this evening in India, this morning in New York. Good to see you, Veer, as always, and thank you for your time. It's very interesting. Let me start actually with the parallels you drew between the Prime Minister and Roosevelt and Margaret Thatcher. Not the typical parallels. His critics tend to compare him with Putin, with Erdogan. You have actually spoken about how there's not much the opposition can do when confronted with a dominant and extremely popular political figure like Prime Minister Modi. Explain this comparison a little bit more between Thatcher, Roosevelt, and Modi that you draw.
Yeah, I think, Barkha, what happens is periodically a leader comes along and that leader captures the public mood, captures public aspirations, gives people the sense that he or she knows what needs to be done. Now, nearly always such leaders are polarizing. In the case of FDR, Roosevelt in America, he was extremely well hated, particularly by people who came from his class, where he was known as a traitor to his class when he did the New Deal. And he rewrote the rules of American politics in many ways. And he was an extraordinary man because he was in a wheelchair, he had many problems, and yet he won them the Second World War. He transformed America, he created the New Deal. And then you have Margaret Thatcher, again, a leader who I think people hated as much as they loved. Look, obviously, more people loved her than hated her. But she really split emotions down the middle. People felt she was heartless. People thought she was thoughtless. People believed that she had no interest in supporting the poor, in supporting the minorities. The attitude she took towards the industrial working class made people hate her. And yet, there was a sense, I think, in the majority of the British electorate that she was doing things that needed to be done. She was the Iron Lady, to use a phrase she preferred herself. Now, when you are up against a leader like that, even if a leader like that makes minor mistakes, it becomes very difficult to defeat them. It's not that everyone who fought Franklin Delano Roosevelt and failed to defeat him was an idiot. There were some very good politicians. If you look at the Labour Party that opposed Margaret Thatcher, people like Michael Foot were giants. It's just they were the wrong people for the wrong time. Mrs. Thatcher just had the advantage. She had the public mood, and people therefore voted for her. The parallel I draw, Barkha, is with the Congress party. I think it is no secret that Mr. Modi is as polarizing a figure as Margaret Thatcher, if not. That just as there are people who love him, and there are many of them, there are people who hate him, people who feel he's transforming India and going in the wrong direction. Those people, I think, even more than the people who like Mr. Modi, are the people who are criticizing the Congress. They take the line that if the Congress had got its act together, Mr. Modi would have been defeated by now. The reason the country is in a mess is because of the Congress. Now, I understand some of the frustration, and I don't dispute that there is something to many of the criticisms. But essentially, I think the Congress, like the Republican Party before it in the Roosevelt era and the Labour Party in the Thatcher era, is up against a leader who's become a force of nature, who it is difficult to oppose. Of course, they could have done a better job of opposing him. Nobody says that they did everything right. But I think a lot of the anger and a lot of the frustration directed at the Congress is based on this bogus assumption that Mr. Modi is not really popular, that he can be defeated. The fact is that Mr. Modi is popular. Many people don't like him, don't like what he's doing to the country, and I understand that. But you cannot deny his popularity, at least in northern India.
Picking up on that, do you think part of the problem is this kind of denialism that those who actually do not like the prime minister's politics, they don't even want to acknowledge that he actually wins fair and square? You can have many debates about the relative freedom of institutions, but the fact is the electoral process reflects genuinely, authentically the popularity of Modi. And I find that part of the problem with his critics is they don't want to acknowledge exactly that popularity that you've just spoken of.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think people feel that I hate Modi. Look what he's done to this institutional democracy. Look what he's done to freedom of speech, etc., etc. And then people who believe that say, therefore, he should lose elections. How come he keeps winning elections? They can't explain that, and so you fall back on the EVMs and various other explanations. I have to say that Mr. Modi makes it a little bit easier for these people because look at the recent events. There is no doubt he's going to win, and he's going to win by a landslide. But the way in which he's trying to break the Congress before the elections, the way in which the income tax department has acted against the Congress's accounts, it adds to this sense that he will win by hook or by crook. He won't stop at anything. I don't really see why he needs to do that. He'll win anyhow.
But isn't it fair game in our politics if people choose to leave one side and join the other? Let's take Kamal Nath, for example. As of now, we believe that Mr. Kamal Nath may not actually leave the Congress, but nobody knows for sure. Now there's talk that if not Kamal Nath, maybe his son will, and so on. In your column for the print, you actually write about the Madhya Pradesh defeat as being a turning point. It was
Yeah.
a turning point in all kinds of ways, right? Kamal Nath overtly, aggressively Hinduized his campaign. That was the language of his campaign. He, in fact, praised Rajiv Gandhi for unlocking and enabling the Ayodhya movement. He took a very different line, even on the so-called boycott of television anchors. He was the first to publicly flout it. He spoke to whoever he wanted to, including television anchors whom the Congress loves to hate, and so on. And then there was this resounding defeat. Now, if he's going to get up and go to the BJP, why blame the BJP for it? There are a lot of people in Congress who would blame the Congress for giving Kamal Nath the kind of free run he had.
Well, I think Madhya Pradesh is an interesting example because pretty much everything has happened to the Congress in the last few years has happened because of Kamal Nath. Kamal Nath became chief minister in Madhya Pradesh over the objections of Jyotiraditya Scindia. There was a sense, I think even Rahul Gandhi probably believed it, that you needed a young leader. You needed to show that there was a different kind of Congress coming. Kamal Nath and Digvijay held firm. Mrs. Gandhi, Sonia Gandhi, took their side and Kamal Nath became chief minister. After which, apparently, Rahul Gandhi had promised Jyotiraditya Scindia that he would get him elected to the Rajya Sabha. Even that, Kamal Nath and Digvijay stopped. Kamal Nath said, we'll send Digvijay to the Rajya Sabha instead. So what happened? Jyotiraditya Scindia left. He took a large number of congressmen with him. The government collapsed. Jyotiraditya Scindia did okay. He became a successful central minister. But Kamal Nath was then out of power. Being out of power and having caused this huge collapse. And he was fighting who? Shivraj Patel, who was like, so what am I saying? Shivraj Singh Chauhan, who was already like on the skids, who nobody thought the BJP would repeat as chief minister. He could have fought an effective battle trying to fight him. He didn't, as you say, he did soft Hindutva, he did various things. And yet, till the end, they were so smug, they were so confident, they were making plans of who they would make ministers when the Congress won the Madhya Pradesh elections. Now you have to be a genius to go out into the districts, to go out in the villages, address rallies, and not realizing there's a landslide building up and you're going to be swept away in that landslide. At the end of all of that, when I think most people in India now realize that Mr. Modi is very strong in the Hindi belt, which means he'll probably get a majority the next election. What does Kamal Nath do? He puts it about that, hey, maybe I'll go to the other side. He's given many opportunities to deny that he will go to the other side. he turns them all down. And as you're saying, as of 5 minutes ago, current state of play is, hey, he may not go after all. But I mean, is this any way for a senior politician to behave? Is this any way for a political party to be run?
So I blame the BJP for that.
Well, I blame the BJP for a simple reason. Because, as you may remember, it was the BJP that told us that Kamal Nath was a very bad man. He was involved in the Sikh riots, and it's a disgrace he's got any kind of office. This is a man who should be in jail. I mean, the BJP has spent a lot of time, having done nothing in 84, now going on and on about the Sikh riots, mainly to use them as a counterpoint to the Gujarat riots. And therefore, they keep trying to find people who they say were involved in them. And Kamal Nath was one of them. Every time Kamal Nath got a ministerial post when he became chief minister, you heard so much about how he'd been involved in these slaughters. You now willing to admit the same guy? So what? He wasn't really involved, you had it wrong, or he was involved, and hey, that's okay now. How can you possibly say that what the BJP did is not to be blamed?
So let's go back to the point you made earlier about Modi's enormous popularity and the fact that when he makes what citizens think or voters think are minor mistakes, they actually forgive him. What I find quite interesting in the electorate today is an interesting mixture of hope and cynicism. So this cynicism when it comes to Kamal Nath, you speak to a BJP voter, of course they'll have a little chuckle over the fact that Kamal Nath was, criticized severely by the BJP when he was firmly in the Congress camp. And if he crosses over, the voter will be cynical. But about Modi per se, there seems to be an attachment of hope. It's a curious mixture of both of these emotions simultaneously. Would you agree? And if you do, how would you explain that?
I find that odd. You're right. I mean, people are so cynical about politicians. One reason why Modi's got away with locking up so many politicians, raiding so many industrialists, is because people believe that industrialists and politicians are crooks. And that even if they have been arrested, even if being arrested only from one party or not from the BJP, TK, they deserved it. Yeah, chore hai. They're all crooks. That kind of cynicism ends at Mr. Modi's door. It's very hard to find any non-political figure who is that cynical about Mr. Modi, who believes that he's a crook. There is a genuine belief in India, and liberals hate this, but it's true, that he's a sincere man, that he's doing his best. People say things that I personally find ridiculous, but they believe them, which is that Indians could not hold their heads up high when they went abroad until Mr. Modi became prime minister. Now we are a proud country. It's because of Mr. Modi we've been restored to our rightful place in the world. Yes, they notice the slightly cynical things he does, the way in which he encourages defections, etc. But there's an interesting one-two there because Mr. Modi is the sage, the great man. The chap who does all this is Amit Shah. And there it's sort of Chandragupta Maurya and Chanakya. Chanakya will do what Chanakya has to, but the emperor is above this all.
That's a very interesting idea of Modi as the sage and Amit Shah as the Chanakya. So any
Yeah.
cynicism that you may feel then is left at Amit Shah's door, and Modi gets to be this sort of
Yeah.
transcendental leader who rises above it all. Now, I'm just going to play out just a short statement from the Prime Minister. This is very interesting because he's sharing the stage with Yogi Adityanath, but also Acharya Pramod Krishnan, who till very recently was a staunch congressman, a devout fan of Priyanka Gandhi Vadra, very close aide of Digvijay Singh. And this is Prime Minister Modi sharing the stage, excuse me, with him.
और अभी जब वो स्वागत प्रवचन कर रहे थे तब उन्होंने कहा कि हर किसी के पास कुछ न कुछ देने को होता है, मेरे पास कुछ नहीं है, मैं सिर्फ भावना व्यक्त कर सकता हूं। प्रमोद जी, अच्छा हुआ कुछ दिया नहीं, वरना जमाना ऐसा बदल गया है कि अगर आज के युग में सुदामा श्री कृष्ण को एक पोटली में चावल देते, वीडियो निकल आती, सुप्रीम कोर्ट में पीआई हो जाती और जजमेंट आता कि भगवान कृष्ण को भ्रष्टाचार में कुछ दिया गया और भगवान कृष्ण भ्रष्टाचार कर रहे थे। इस वक्त में हम जुगर रहे हैं और इससे अच्छा है कि आपने भावना प्रकट की और कुछ दिया नहीं।
Okay, so those comments can be read in many, many ways. But since there was a reference to the Supreme Court, you get this kind of critical judgment of a key policy of the Modi government, actually Arun Jaitley's brainchild. But again, to be fair, parties that have criticized electoral bonds have also taken money via that route. The Congress, the Trinamool Congress, and I name them because they're number two and number three. The BJP gets 57% of those bonds. I raise this because even when there's an adverse sort of intervention by one of the other institutions, actually reaffirming the fact that these institutions do work and are working, it has no electoral consequences for Modi. What I find fascinating is any setback that the Prime Minister has faced in the last 9 years, there has been no electoral consequence for him. Farmers, the first time around, he withdrew the laws. This time around, they're negotiating and they're close to a solution. COVID, the electoral bonds. Think of anything. Think of anything that hasn't gone his way. Demonetization. There has been no electoral consequence for him. How do you read that?
COVID, COVID,
COVID.
which you will remember, you've written a book about it. The last India Today Mood of the Nation poll, people asked to name Mr. Modi's greatest achievement have named his handling of the COVID pandemic.
And how do you explain that? That's the exact
You're the one who
question.
wrote the book. You're the one who has to explain that.
I
But
can
that is the mood.
I
That
can
is the
explain
mood of
about
India.
COVID. I can explain
But
about
no, but
COVID.
there is that mood in India that is that yes, things went wrong during COVID, but it wasn't his fault. There is a sense in which Mr. Modi is seen as being above it all. And then this whole vaccine story, which people have bought, is being seen as Mr. Modi's triumph, that he protected us by inventing, personally perhaps, two Indian made vaccines, and that saved India from it. You can argue, you can be rational, you can be whatever you want, but this is what people believe. There is no getting around it, as you say. Even if there are things that would have felled lesser leaders, created dramas, tamashas, crises, he just rides through it like nothing happened. And nobody votes against him as a consequence. And there's a chicken and egg thing because when you challenge them and you say, what about this? What about unemployment? They say, well, who would have done a better job? What is the alternative? So they have it covered on both sides. And as long as he keeps winning elections, there won't be an alternative. And as long as there isn't an alternative, he'll keep winning elections.
So let's come back to the parallels you drew, let's say, with Thatcher. England
Yeah.
England had New Labour. Tony Blair crafts a New Labour, a third way. And they actually talk about radical centricism. And you see a sort of Keir Starmer attempting that right now, moving the Labour away from the Jeremy Corbyn kind of left politics. Now, the reason I bring up this parallel is not just because of your Thatcher parallel, because there's a lot of debate about whether the Congress has lurched to left. It no longer resides at the centre, at the sort of the instinctive center of how most Indians respond. Do you believe when you think of a Thatcher and you think of Blair's third way, and I'm not being literal here, I'm just throwing up an idea, that the opposition needs a third way, and they've been trying to find one, to be fair to them, lurching between sort of Rahul Gandhi's very overt Hinduism to talking about secularism to basically muddling their way through. What is this third way if it is in the left?
Well, a couple of things. I think people forget that Mrs. Thatcher ultimately was ousted by her own party because her popularity had begun to wane. Many surveys in England showed up TBW factor, which is not a political thing to say, but it stood for that bloody woman. And that's why many British people, Tories particularly, who talk like that, were not voting for her. They replaced her with John Major, the grey man. And against the odds, John Major defeated Neil Kinnock and defeated Labour and went on to serve a full term. So the vision we have that Mrs. Thatcher was felled by Blair and Brown and by New Labour is not accurate. I just think the things Mrs. Thatcher believed in, whatever she said had to be done, the unions had to be tamed. Britain had to go from being a industrial economy with the idea being you destroy the industrial workers in the process and become a service economy. All that work had been done. And therefore, the time was right for Blair. I'm not sure we're at that state in India. I don't think people feel the work has been done. Mr. Modi certainly gives the impression that his third term will be the most important yet, and whatever unfinished agenda there is left in the Hindutva platform, he will implement.
But is there a problem with the Congress having ceded nationalism, religion, both of these big things? And of course, the cult of personality Mr. Modi enjoys already in comparison to Rahul Gandhi. But when you look at nationalism, this is the party of India's independence movement historically, right? You've just basically given away nationalism on a platter to the BJP. Is the Congress, or today, are Congress ideologues too left of center to get India?
I don't even know if it's the left right thing. I've hardly ever met anybody who says, I won't vote for the Congress because they're lefties. They will say things like, I won't vote for the Congress because they're incompetent, Rahul is a fool, they do nothing to inspire me, they're all trying to leave, etc. I've never heard anyone say they're too lefty. And if you talk to industrialists, and you talk about the kind of controls the Modi government has put on industry, you talk about the kind of scrutiny they're under, how difficult it is even to launch a project without having raids from different enforcement and income tax organizations. I don't think they think Modi is a champion of the right wing either. So I think this left right thing in India is a red herring.
If it is, then you seem to be suggesting that that the primary reason that Modi wins is the personality assertion. That everything else,
Yeah,
it's
I
not
think more.
ideological, it's not ideological, it's not organizational, it's not resource, it's not welfareism, it is actually Modi. It is just
No,
purely
it's
Modi.
primarily his personality, but there are other factors that go with it. One of them is resource mobilization. You mentioned electoral bonds. Just the gap between number one and two will tell you how much more money the BJP has. It's also control of social media, control of all media. Can it be a complete coincidence that the Hindi language television media, which is completely pro Modi, is the media that affects votes in the Hindi belt, which is also completely pro Modi? Is it a coincidence that as this country has now become so enamored of social media, of smartphones, it's the BJP that has the advantage there? Yes, I think nationalism is part of it. People see Mr. Modi as taking India forward. People see things like the G20 presidency as the world coming together and saying, hey, Mr. Modi's cool. We've got to really make him president. People see that. People see that kind of nationalism as counting for something. But it is primarily his personality, his charisma, and the fact that people like him, they look up to him, and they trust him.
So let's talk about the key personality taking him on, Rahul Gandhi. You wrote,
Yeah.
as did many others, many of us wrote when he took out his first Bharat Jodo Yatra, that it had gone some distance in repairing a kind of broken image, that people weren't going to mock him as Papu again, that he'd at least passed the meme
Sure.
obstacle in his brand building. The second Yatra has been a complete flop for him politically. His allies have refused to join him. Mamta Banerjee has mocked him openly. Nitish Kumar, before he could join him, has joined the BJP. Akhilesh Yadav, as the Yatra, as Rahul Gandhi is in Amethi on the same day the Smriti Irani is there. The BJP is very good at that, at timing it such that Rahul Gandhi never really gets the headlines. Akhilesh Yadav has said that, look, at the moment, we're not interested in joining this Yatra. Has Rahul Gandhi's Yatra 2.0 been a complete mistake?
Well, I think when we talk about Rahul Gandhi, we talk about two separate things. One was, is he being seen as an alternative to Modi? And the second is he a buffoon? I think until he went on the first Yatra, the view that he was a buffoon, which had been propagated by the BJP across all media with the willing support of the mainstream media, and of course on social media, had taken hold. I think that idea is now less prevalent. People are willing to question it. But it's a long way from saying this man is not an idiot and saying he's a rival to Mr. Modi. That's a huge gap, which I don't think Rahul has managed to traverse. Also, I've said this to you before, I have never been a fan of the India idea. India is essentially a collection of regional leaders united by their hatred of the Congress who pretend that they're anti BJP. So, of course, when they know they're not going to get anywhere at the BJP at a national level, they sink their teeth into the Congress's thigh and they bite away.
when you I just found it very interesting. I know you said this the last time, but it bears repetition that you actually think the India Alliance, the other parties that are not Congress, hate the Congress more than they hate the BJP.
Sorry, I
You
said what?
actually think you actually think that the regional parties in the India Alliance hate the
Yeah.
Congress more than
This
they hate the
more than
BJP.
they hit the BJP, absolutely. And I'm not even convinced. I mean, you've had Mr. Deshmukh and people who understand this stuff much more than I do on your show, but I'm not even convinced the electoral math ever worked.
Yeah, because actually Yashwant surveys show that the slight rise projected for the Congress in 2014 is not taking those seats from the BJP, but is actually taking them from the regional parties. So actually, it's the
Exactly.
regional parties and the Congress that are
Which is
that
why
is
the
that.
regional parties hate the Congress because they cannibalize each other. The BJP stands apart.
Yeah, sorry, and I said 2014, I meant 2024, that his
No,
projections for
I got that.
2000,
Yeah,
yeah, his projections
I
for
got that.
2024, the increase is from the regional parties. Now, just to go back briefly to Kamal Nath, we opened this conversation by saying Kamal Nath so far is not leaving. In the time that we've been talking, we know that there's a big meeting happening at Kamal Nath's house, and they have let it be known that Kamal Nath is very upset with Rahul Gandhi's RVJ lobby, Randeep Surjewala, KC Venugopal, and Jairam Ramesh. Now, you hear a lot of this, right? And you don't hear it, or you didn't hear it similarly about Ahmed Patel and Sonia Gandhi. And I do want to spend a little bit of time talking about whether it's just that the Congress was more popular and therefore people were more scared of the Gandhis? Or is there a
No,
difference
no,
between
but
how Sonia
there's
Gandhi.
always it's like a tradition in the Congress that because you can't attack the leader, you attack the so-called coterie. It's always the people around the leader. We now sort of venerate Ahmed Patel, but you should have heard things people said about Ahmed Patel when he was in a position of influence. In Mrs. Gandhi's time, Gyani Zel Singh, Arun Nehru, Pranab Mukherjee, the people around her were as abused. In Rajiv Gandhi's time, it was first the Arun Nehrus and Arun Singhs who were attacked. Later, it was Satish Sharma. That's a Congress tradition. I mean, as far as Kamal Nath is concerned, this is a man who was made chief minister of Madhya Pradesh against the advice of many people who said he has a slightly sleazy reputation. You need younger blood. They lost Jyotiraditya Scindia because of him. They lost the state because of him. He's still there as a big leader. For him to complain, I mean, what does he want them to do?
And he has taken down the Jai Shri Ram flag outside his home as rumors swirl about what he might do next. It's actually quite amusing for
Though, I mean,
journalists.
I have to say that there's a certain circularity. If you look at parallels of leaders who had the same kind of policies as Mr. Modi, I don't think Mr. Advani or Mr. Vajpayee were in any sense his predecessors. The man who really epitomized many of the things that Mr. Modi stands for now was Sanjay Gandhi. And Kamal Nath was Sanjay Gandhi chamcha, so maybe he's just coming to a spiritual home.
In fact, that comment has been made about how, many of Sanjay Gandhi's aides are the ones walking out, but that would be glossing over what's actually happening in the Congress. And you said that we forget today that people said all kinds of things about Ahmed Patel. We forget that even in the BJP, there were all of these internal politics with the Advani camp and the Vajpayee camp and all of that.
Right.
All true. But let's talk about the fact that Sonia Gandhi is now officially taking a step back from electoral politics. And my
Yep.
question was really going to be that you don't, even today, people may say things about Ahmed Patel, but they never really used to say things about Sonia Gandhi. There was some sort of, people, at least I haven't seen the kind of attacks that Rahul Gandhi faces
You
ever
know,
applied for his
until
mother.
Sonia Gandhi won the 2004 election, many people in the Congress, I think Kapil Sibal even wrote a letter saying that, said she was a fool, she was destroying the Congress, she should leave the Congress. Sangma, Tariq Anwar, Sharad Pawar all left the Congress saying, we can never win with this woman in charge. So you're remembering the Sonia Gandhi who won the election, but before that, they said the same things about her.
But is there a difference in the Sonia Gandhi run Congress and the Rahul Gandhi controlled
Yes,
Congress?
that's a
Can we
different
can,
question. Of
can,
course,
can
there
we
is.
talk?
Sonia
Can we talk
Gandhi had
about?
very strong political instincts. Sonia Gandhi was a listener. She may not have said much. If people went to see her, she listened. She thought. She made up her mind. She was not a politician who worked by instinct or hunch. She was cautious, she took careful decisions. Rahul Gandhi, I think, believes he's an instinctive politician and he takes instinctive decisions, which is brilliant, except that his instincts are usually wrong.
But the way you make the argument, at least in your print column and in this conversation, you seem to suggest that Modi is such a force of nature at this moment that
Yeah.
whatever anybody does, they can travel the length of the country, they can make a sincere a sort of counter ideological argument to him. The Congress is drowning, and it's drowning not because of choices that it has made. It is drowning because this is that moment in Indian politics. That's almost what you seem to be saying.
No, I'm saying the Congress has made many mistakes, but I am saying that the reason the Congress is in this mess is not primarily because of those mistakes. It's primarily because it's very difficult, if not almost impossible, to oppose a politician like Mr. Modi when he's at his peak. Don't forget, this is a man who has never lost an election in his life, not in Gujarat, not in the center.
That's quite something. I had actually briefly forgotten that Modi has never ever lost an election in his life, and that has to give you some sense of political invincibility. But
Yeah.
let's talk in the end about the kind of opposition the Modi government does respond to. If you look at the last 9 years, they do engage with movements of the street that they believe have an electoral consequence. Farmers protests the first time, the second time, no matter how many BJP supporters may draw, links of Bhindranwale to the farmers, say they have links with Pannu, these are Khalistanis infiltrating the movement, etc. Even the second time around, you had three union ministers hold multiple rounds of talks, right? They may have put up all of these barricades and prevented the farmers from coming to Delhi, but they're engaging with the street. In the CAA time also, they may well operationalize it now before the elections, I don't know. But during the CAA protest, the protest against the Citizenship Amendment Act, then too, they halted the immediate implementation. So what it tells you is that they may not take the political opposition seriously or the organized political opposition seriously, but they do respond to the street. How do you read that?
Well, but I wrote in Indira Gandhi's time that because the parliamentary opposition was failing, the opposition came from parallel politics. And parallel politics in those days was another farmers' movement led by Sharad Joshi. It was industrial labor run by the people, the movement was run by people like Datta Samant. And I said that the danger with this kind of political protest on the streets and outside of parliament, which the government had to take seriously, was it was not unthinkable for that kind of protest to degenerate into violence and perhaps secessionism. And we actually do know what happened in Mrs. Gandhi's second term, whether it was Punjab, whether it was the agitation in Assam. So I think there is that danger. After that, all political parties, all politicians have gone out of the way to deal with people who go out on the streets. The most notable example, probably the most foolish example, because they should never have done that, was the last UPA government, UPA 2, and this farcical India against corruption with Anna Hazare, who they dumped under the bus when they formed their own political party. If you remember, 7 ministers went to the airport to receive Swami Ramdev. All political parties seem to believe that that kind of street-wide opposition has to be countered. And the UPA did a spectacularly bad job of countering it. The Modi government is doing better.
Finally, Veer, one of the challenges that I see for the opposition is that Mr. Modi has co-opted a lot of the ideological spaces on which the opposition could fashion a counter response. Nationalism, gone. Hindutva, gone. Caste engineering, social engineering, whatever you want to call it, whether it's the Bharat Ratna to Karpuri Thakur, a very careful understanding by Amit Shah of the OBC vote, Modi claiming and not claiming, Modi identifying himself as an OBC prime minister in parliament, then the Congress response saying, no, you're not actually a real OBC and so on. The point I'm making is literally every space you think of, welfareism, nationalism, social engineering, Hindutva, it's all used, deployed, weaponized by the BJP very effectively. So what is the opposition to do? Who is the opposition? Which actually means that it's not ideology but personality that is needed to counter Modi.
Yeah, I mean, every time I agree with you, but every time I say this, there's a counter to this, which is sure, why doesn't it work in South India then? And the answer to that has to be that yes, he's used welfareism, the sort of welfareism he inherited from the UPA, much better than the UPA did. He's taken nationalism that Mrs. Gandhi used to take in a much stronger way than Indira Gandhi ever did. He's done many things right. And yet, at the end of the day, his appeal, his strongest appeal, ends in the Hindi speaking states with a few exceptions, maybe Assam, etc. If all of this was so unbeatable, why doesn't he sweep South India every time? So there are chinks in that armor. There are weaknesses. The opposition just hasn't found them.
Yeah, that's an interesting question, and it will be also interesting to see how much Modi focuses on the South if he takes a
He's
third term, which,
focusing now very hard on the South. I mean, in almost every speech, there's some reference to the South. He goes off to Kerala or to Dubai, which is nearly the same thing, and he tries to talk in Malayalam, etc. He's trying very hard. But will they see him as a leader from the Hindi belt, or will they see him as a national leader? The one advantage the Congress had was that they were always seen as national leaders. Unfortunately, they're not seen as Hindi belt leaders any longer, and that's why they're in this mess.
do you believe that there's any surprise or any sort of development that you'd still be following closely from now till the elections, or do you believe the elections are a kind of done deal?
Well, you're talking to a man who, when Vajpayee was up against Sonia Gandhi, told everybody, including Sonia Gandhi, Vajpayee is going to win by a landslide, get used to it. And you know what happened. So I no longer predict elections.
Yeah, even Vajpayee thought he was going to win by landslide.
That's right.
Even Sonia Gandhi thought Vajpayee was going
Thought,
to
yeah.
win
So,
by
so I no
landslide.
longer make predictions.
Okay, I know I keep saying last question. Really, this is really the last question. You wrote in another column that don't expect a softer prime minister in his third term.
Yeah.
It's going to be more of the same, etc. But you see, since I think you wrote that column, some minor developments taking place that could raise a question mark around that. Mr. Modi holds on Christmas Day a
We,
meeting
we
with
had this
Christians.
conversation last time, and you
We
thought
did.
and thought, and you said he invited people home for Christmas, and he sent some message to some Muslims, and that was pretty much all you could think of.
Well, I'm wondering, and I don't know for sure,
Uh,
whether this Pasmanda Muslim outreach,
yeah,
they've actually,
that's the example you gave last time, but
yeah,
not much more has come of it, no?
not so far, not so
Yeah.
far. But I'm just wondering whether you still believe that we will see exactly the same sort of
I think we will see the
politics.
same sort of politics, but I think, and God forbid, I hope that doesn't happen, when you have a minority, which is what, 14 to 15% of the population, you have a new generation, it'll be around 10, 11 years, that has seen what they consider some level of discrimination. There will be anger. That anger will come out in the streets. I think if Mr. Modi is smart, and of course, he's the smartest politician we've ever seen, he will find some way of addressing that anger.
There's been a lot of talk that if Rahul Gandhi were to declare that he's never going to be prime minister, much like Sonia Gandhi did, that if he were to make it clear that his attachment to politics is an act of
But he
public
has said that,
service.
Barkha. He said, I don't want to be prime minister to many people. I think he said it on record as well. Unfortunately, there's no point saying you're not going to be prime minister if congressmen genuflect everywhere you go and act like you're the supreme leader. No? I
No,
personally don't think he wants to be prime minister. And on the subject of Sonia Gandhi, she said she was going to be prime minister right till the end. She never wanted to be prime minister, but she only announced she wouldn't be prime minister after the UPA was formed because she was terrified that if she'd stepped down and said that earlier, Lalu and co would have staked their claim. It was only clear when they decided she'd be prime minister that she revealed her mind and put Manmohan Singh forward.
you're right. My producer just pulled out Rahul Gandhi's statement from 2013 saying he's not in politics to become prime minister. He wants
Yeah.
to serve. He wants to serve the Congress. The point is nobody believes it because
No,
when you
that's what I
saw
said. I mean, it's nice to say that, but they keep genuflecting around you and acting like you're the crown prince, you have a credibility problem.
And that's the point, right? Even when it came to naming a convener or a candidate for prime ministership at the India Alliance, it all went to hell because Mamta Banerjee proposed Kharge's name, Nitish Kumar wanted that job, Kharge said no. So basically, everybody thinks that Kharge is a placeholder for the moment when Rahul Gandhi can be prime minister. So nobody believes that he.
It's
Nobody
possible.
believes
Listen,
that.
in a country where Deve Gowda can be prime minister, anything is possible.
We haven't spoken about one Gandhi, and the reason to end with speaking
About
about
who?
her, I said there's one Gandhi we haven't spoken about, and
Priyanka
that
Gandhi is.
and it becomes relevant only
Yeah.
because Sonia Gandhi is moving to the Rajya Sabha, and there's an anticipation that Priyanka could contest either Raebareli or somewhere else. We don't know.
Yeah.
There was a time when that was the great enigma, the great political enigma in the Congress. I don't know anybody responds like that anymore. Is that still a factor?
I don't think it'll make a lot of difference. I'm sure she's a competent politician. People in her area in Raebareli, where she's worked for many, many years, seem to respect her, seem to like her. We forget that when Satish Sharma fought Arun Nehru had finally gone to the party, he should have gone to begin with the BJP, and Satish Sharma was fighting from the Congress. Priyanka destroyed Arun Nehru's candidacy with one speech in that constituency. So, yes, Priyanka does have certain power within that constituency. If she were able to mobilize women voters who, on the whole, have not shown a clear preference, so some polls say they're not as keen on Mr. Modi as others, some say the opposite, it could make a difference. But could she get up there and challenge Mr. Modi? Hard to believe yet.
Let's end where your column started. You said the Congress is drowning. Do you believe the Congress, like has happened in the past, will split? Do you believe that a mutiny is needed to save the Congress? Do you believe, as Yogendra Yadav once used to say, and no longer says today, that the Congress needs to die for a new opposition to emerge?
Yeah, but Yogendra Yadav said that, and his party was AAP. I think AAP needs to die for a new opposition in Delhi to start, and Yogendra Yadav will probably agree with that, given his experiences with AAP. No, so I don't believe any party needs to die. I think the Congress needs to get its act together. The Labour Party, to use our preferred example from earlier, got its act together after Thatcher and Major. I think the Congress can do it. How, when, I don't know, but fortnight is a long time in politics.
Always fascinating, Veer. Thank you so much. It's been a pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you, Barkha. Thank you for inviting me.
Thank you. Take care.
Mojo Story has always made a commitment to its viewers to go to where the story is. And as you can see here, we are at the epicenter of the Israel war on Gaza. We are right at the front line, about 1 mile from the Gaza Strip, as the Israeli military gets ready with its tanks and its gunners to begin its final frontal assault that will take troops into Gaza. As we said, we are not like other organizations. We believe in giving you all sides of the story objectively and as much as possible from the ground. And that's exactly what we're doing here, covering the biggest global story today from the epicenter of the war zone. So please, we need your support. Support us, become a Mojo member, subscribe to us, spread the word, and thank you for your support.